Ahoy YouTube, it's Professor Mimi from Cardfight Crash Course with a very special BCS champion deck tech on the winner of BCS Pasadena 25-26. The prize card was this very nice Megaloma here. Yeah, you can see that little BCS hot stamp right there. My partner Alicia won the whole tournament with her really cool, well, it's cool in a sense, Eradicator deck featuring the lovely Dragonic Vanquisher and his friend Steve, or Sweep Command Dragon. Everybody calls him Steve. I think it was like some typo or something from some long ago post. This is one of those internet lore things I don't get, but we call him Steve. That's what matters. Now, there's a choice restriction between Steve and a grade 1. So before we start talking about the rest of the deck, I want to talk about why we're playing Steve. To go with this lovely World's Participant Harmonic Society in the G Zone, there's a very important card, Conquest Supreme Dragon Exterminate Dragon, who I had so much trouble with trying to pull up the cards for you to read them. I'm going to include the deck log in the description, so in this video's doobly-doo, go down there, and any of the cards I mentioned that are in the deck that you would like to read for yourself, you could click on them like I will, and then now I can read them from this other monitor, and you can pause the video and check out this card yourself. It has 2 skills. Its first effect is when it's placed on Vanguard, you Soul Blast 1 and you draw a card for each of your opponent's front row, and then act, Counter Blast 1. All of your front row units gets plus 10 for each of your opponent's front row. So this card wants you to make your opponent's front row empty. And that on place skill is very difficult to trigger after your opponent has just called the board and attacked you. How are you going to get rid of their board before they've done anything? And Steve is one of the only cards that lets you do that. Steve has an on place skill that's going to let you bind 2 rear guards. When he's placed on Vanguard or rear guard, you can Soul Blast 1 to choose one of your opponent's front row rear guards and bind it. Then you choose a back row rear guard and move it up. I thought for some reason you could trigger that twice. Oh, yeah, that's right. That is another skill. Vanguard, once per turn, when your opponent's rear guard is bound during your turn, choose one of your opponent's front row rear guards and bind it. Then, if you're at limit break, 4 more cards in your damage zone, Counter Blast 1 and Soul Blast 1, you get an Excel gift. Choose a card with an Eradicator in its card name from your drop zone, and you call it to rear guard. So with Steve, you can ride him, bind an opponent's front row. Like if your opponent's playing a deck with just 2 open front rows, you ride him, you bind a front row, you slide up something to the other front row. If it's full, you can just choose not to. That's totally fine. Just choose up to one of your opponent's back row. So if you don't want to clog up that circle, then don't. Then that'll trigger his second skill. Because your opponent's rear guard was bound, you choose one of your opponent's front row rear guards and bind it. So then you can clear off their front row, just like that. And then if you're at limit break, you can get another Excel gift, which is pretty strong, and you can get back an Eradicator from your drop zone. And there's some pretty decent cards. None of them are showstoppers per se, but these 2 cards have an extremely strong interaction together, and that's kind of what the deck is built around, is because Darakami has good strides, but like, sort of not really at the same time. Like this is, Exterminate is one of their best strides, and without being able to enable his full potential, you're kind of stuck kneecapping yourself. The other card, is a grade 1 that gives you on hit pressure. On hit, you can like add an Eradicator from the top 5. I don't even believe it has to get rid of itself. I think you can put it into the soul to bind an opponent's rear guard. So you can just keep getting the top 5 checks to add Eradicators to your hand, which gives you a really good early game. But the early game pivot is going to be a lot harder to pivot into a strong end game when you don't have really strong strides like full power Exterminate, because you can make Exterminate give your front row power, but cutting yourself off of 2 draws is kind of unfortunate. So you have to get, and since you can do this multiple times, like you could stride him twice, right? And you can draw 4 cards. unless you're getting 4 cards of value out of your grade 1, then it's not necessarily actually plussing you, and this choice ends up being the better choice from the choice restriction. So, with that in mind, that we are built around using our friend Steve, let's look at her deck, because she made some interesting decisions with her deck building that I thought were pretty cool. I remember actually, we'll get to it in just a second. We'll go from the top down, because we already started with Steve. So she has a playset of Vairina Esper. I'm not sure which one she likes better between the DSR or the SP. So she's got 2 of each. Vairina Esper is a grade 4, 13k. It has overdress and whatnot, but what really matters is that when your Vanguard attacks, you can Soul Blast 1 and stand it back up. So this gives you a restand. It doesn't cost a counterblast. For a long time, a lot of people would play Cho-Oh, and from her perspective, Cho-Oh just felt like a misuse of your counterblast. What you do with your counterblasts is very important, and using them on a restand didn't feel very impactful, but using your Soul Blast on a restand felt pretty good to her. So she's playing an entire playset of Esper, and the fact that it's a grade 4 and doesn't come online doesn't matter too much, because aside from the playset of Steve, which we've already talked about, one of a very, very important card that we're built around here, we have the 3 Dragonic Vanquisher. Dragonic Vanquisher is one of those stride bearers from G era, which enables us to use one of the other cards in our G zone. The stride from History Collection, that a lot of people colloquially call this cycle of cards History Strides. Lightning Dragon Knight Zoras, or Zoras, if you kind of roll your R's. It has the updated History Stride buff, so it's not just this text box. It also has if you have no Excel gifts and your Vanguard is Vanquisher, you can discard cards whose grade is 3 to stride it from your G-Zone from face down, and then you make 2 imaginary gift Excels, which is pretty neat. And then it gains a continuous on Vanguard that all of your on-hit skills for this card work even if you don't hit. So his Vanguard, when this unit attack hits skill always works. Your opponent chooses one of their rear guards and retires it, and you choose 2 cards from their bind zone or from their drop zone and bind it. So that part's like neat, but what really matters is that going first, you can ride this, make 2 Excel markers, call 2 Espers to the Excel markers, and swing for 18, 18, restand, 18, 18. And if your opponent is on a 9k, that's pretty tough. 10k, same thing. But if your opponent has had the unfortunate consequences of riding one of those silly 8ks, they are doomed. A defensive no longer will shut down those restand attacks, so they can be in a real spot of bother. 7 grade 3s is a very appropriate amount to have. And with 4 more things to pitch for stride, without even getting into our triggers, we already have a sufficient amount of stride materials. So that makes that part of the deck pretty smooth. The next grade 2 we have to deal with is, oops, I grabbed too many. Oh, there should be a playset of this. Hold on. Oh, right. It's because we'll come back to the next playset. This is the one card in the deck that she would have changed. Meteor Flare Dragon is a 10k grade 2 from standard that lets you negate your opponent's continuous skills, which is pretty neat, but it basically never comes up. I don't think it's come up for her in the 3 tournament runs she's done with this deck, because she played this back in Crest Hari Night Rose format. It was kind of engineered to beat Crest Hari, and she played this deck, but then in that tournament she literally didn't end up facing a Crest deck, which kind of tilted her. But then in the next tournament she played in Rosemont, she played against multiple Crest decks and absolutely cleaned their clocks. So it was nice for her to see that it finally worked. And then she made top 16, and then in the classic fashion, she bricked in top 16 and could not defeat that Gear Chronicle ZTB deck that got top 4. She was like, oh, it's my top 4. No, I've been robbed. So she wanted her run back, and she was able to get it in her run back. She went all the way to, again, first place. This won the BCS. It is quite a refined deck, but even though it's quite refined, it doesn't mean that every choice is perfect. I'm not sure what the name of the card is that you would have replaced it with, but I believe there's a card from Standard that when you guard with it, you do something, and it makes your opponent draw a card. And that's really useful in the degenerate matchups, because some people in Premium right now are kind of aggressively trying to not play Premium. There's 2 different Grand Blue decks that are trying to do like an infinite loop, or if they're not doing an infinite loop, they're trying to stack their overtrigger. So the amount of cards they have in their deck is exactly equal to the amount of cards they're going to need for their drive checks plus OT, and then they're going to have 1 card left in their deck. 1 card, so that when they do all their combo, they don't die. But if their opponent lives, then they were dead anyway. So, but if you make them draw a card, now they deck out and their combo is fizzled. The Fenrir loop deck, it's not a loop. I don't know why everybody keeps calling it a loop. I'm gonna call it Fenrir OTK, where they get a rear guard on a Force 2 gift. They make it, and then another rear guard that can copy its power. Then they do a whole bunch of nonsense to, hopefully, the goal is to have 15 cards in their soul to turn off your Sentinels. And then when they swing with their Vanguard, they stack their deck so they check crit, crit, red OT. So the unit on this Force gift over here has base 2 crit, up to 4 crit, and then red OT, so it swings for 4 damage, restands, swings for 4 damage. Then the other one copies its power and crit, and then it swings for 100, so it's 100 million for 4, 100 million for 4, and then 100 million for 6, all no Sentinels. But they have 1 card in their deck when they do that, so if you make them draw a card, they lose. And one of the last game she played in, this card she had, and she was playing against Fenrir OTK, and she would have lost, but luckily that opponent was somebody in our team, so they talked it out, and there was like, yeah, I'm not actually topping. Sounds like you've got, sounds like you're still in it. Sounds like you're winning and in it, and I'm out no matter what, so I'm just gonna give it to you. But if it wasn't a teammate and she didn't have that social circle on her side, it is quite possible that this slot would have lost her the tournament. So if you were thinking about playing this deck yourself, I'm not quite sure what that card's name is. I might post it in the description, but I had to film now while the light is out. For now, though, Meteor Flare Dragon has done nothing for her, so it's just around. It's a card. It's not. It's cute, and it has potential to do cute stuff. Like, she put it in for some reasons, but I think the format has changed since she added that card, so it should probably be removed to deal with the new format of degenerate nonsense, which I say that's the format. It's not really very popular. Most people are actually trying to play Vanguard and are not trying to do degenerate OTKs. A lot of those degenerate decks actually aren't seeing very much success, and they don't cut through top very well. They actually have a surprisingly low conversion rate, especially those solitaire style decks like Shout Loop. I don't want to get too much on a tangent. This is a video about ERADs, but this is a tech slot for the format as a whole. So if you want to do something else, think about that the format is not as degenerate as a lot of YouTubers and Twitter players are making it out to be. Everybody likes to cry, blah, blah, blah. But I was out there, I was judging, I looked at most of the decks. Most of the degenerate players had a bad time and dropped, and seemed like they were going to change their decks they were playing in the future. Whereas most players were getting out there just trying to do their best to have fun playing Vanguard. It's kind of low-key a casual format, such as why a big hitter deck like this can really stomp on casual decks. Really bad. It's quite powerful what it can do. Moving on to our actual grade 2s and the rest of the lineup, which is pretty set in stone, except for one card which she made suboptimal on purpose because it was funny. This grade 2 here is Eradicator Spark Rays. This combo is really good with the card we couldn't play because of the choice restriction. It has Vanguard Rearguard. When its attack hits, Soul Last one draw a card, which is really good. Especially when comboed with a booster with a non-hit effect, it creates a lot of pressure. It also has its first skill, Vanguard. When this unit is placed, it gets +5 until end of turn. You check the top 5 cards of your deck. You choose an Eradicator, put it in your hand, and shuffle, and then you discard if you added one. It's a very strong card. just by itself, getting to get rid of your quick shield and get an Eradicator is really useful. And the on-hit pressure, Vanguard or Rearguard, can help you stabilize your hand in the game and convert your soul pretty efficiently into useful resources. The next grade 2 we have is Supreme Army Eradicator Zuiton. When your opponent's rearguard is bound during the turn, this unit and all of your Eradicator Gauntlet Busters get +5. There's no Gauntlet Busters in here, so he just gets +5 anytime your opponent's rearguard is bound. At the end of the battle, this unit attacks a Vanguard. If your opponent has no front row rearguards, you can put it into your soul and draw. So then he floats. So, he's not directly card advantage because you lose a card to draw a card. But then when you use the Soul Blast to draw a card, it becomes a plus in the sense that you gain a resource, which then you can use to actually convert into card advantage. So she has only 9 grade 2s to ride. A 10k is cute. It's clutch. I believe the other card you would replace it with is also a 10k. She was kind of scared about having 8, which I told her a few times that 8 is actually plenty. The 5 is the bare minimum, and of course nobody should be playing 5. That's a whole spiel. But 9 is plenty. It might spook you at first, be like, oh my gosh, there's not very many grade 2s in here. Whatever are we gonna do? If that spooks you, this next part will spook you even more. There are only 9 grade 1s in this deck. And that spooks me a little bit, but you know what spooks me even more than 9 grade 1s? What spooks me is those freaking, what's the name of that deck? Valkyrion, Astral Poets, where they would play 8 grade 1s, and I have never seen them fail to ride to grade 1. Never. It's because if they don't have a grade 1, they just kind of send their whole hand back looking for one. So it's very important with a deck like this to make correct mulligans. You don't want to like hold on to top end pieces like, oh, what have I? No, you don't have very many grade 1s. You need. These are all the grade 1s we have. You need to find one. And there's only 9, so you have to aggressively mulligan to find one of these to ride. Even if it's your perfect guard. Even if. You have to find one. The grade 1s are pretty choice. There's not very many, but the ones we do have are quite impactful. We have the Isolation Eradicator, Nusuku, who has just 1 skill. When she's placed on Vanguard or Rearguard, you look at the top 5 of your deck. You choose an Erad from among them, put it into your hand. If you add a card, you discard a card. So she has a very similar skill to Sweep Command? No. Spark Rays. They do a very similar thing, so having 8 cards that do that lets you really consistently do things which you otherwise might not be able to. It's a very solid card because it's one of our only 6 8Ks. We're playing 2 of the cycle of grade 1s that let you their place from hand. You check the top 5 cards of your deck for a grade 3 specifically from among them, put it in your hand, and then you discard it. And that's grade 3, not grade 3 unit. So it doesn't add Espers, but it can add Bracing Angel Ladder to your hand, which is pretty important. Because that's how you beat this deck, is you resolve Bracing Angel Ladder before you do your push turn, because they can shut down your push turn. We'll get to how they interact with you in a little bit, but this card is important for helping your consistency and for helping you with the mirror for the hits to ladder. It's pretty huge. And then they all have a second effect, continuous, if you've done your clan mechanic +5. So their clan mechanic is binding. So it says if any card was bound this turn, it gets +5, and that's pretty easy to do. The only reason we're running 2 is because it's name restricted with it has the same card name. Most of them do. This grade 3 searcher with the stride searcher, or the stride fodders. When you're paying the cost of stride, they count as grade 3. That doesn't work for the act skill in the G zone of the history stride, so be mindful of that. But they have a second skill on place. You can reveal a grade 3 from your hand and then search your clan's stride bearer and add it. So if you don't have, if you're going first, is this a grade 3 or greater? I've never actually thought about that until just now. This is a grade 3. Choose up to one grade 3. As we do. Yeah, grade 3 card. So you can even reveal Bracing Angel Ladder. That's cute. Grade 3 card, huh? So you can place this to reveal, like a sweep command, then you go grab Vanquisher, and then you discard your Quick Shield, and then you're all set up to do your History Stride play. This gives you 5 copies of Vanquisher total, which is about as much as you want. If you want to have, like I said with the grade 2s, 5 is a magic sweet spot for finding that slot on time. So you even have 1 extra turn to find it, especially considering this isn't going to work on your ride step. So on your turn 2, then that's when you're going to want to have access to one of these cards to make sure that you're not going to just like throw this out for no value. So it gets you just the right amount of targets. But then just one last thing, the thing that made it slightly suboptimal is she's playing her prize card Perfect Guard. It's tough to see, but there's that little BCS hot stamp right there. BCS from her top cut in Standard and Rosemont. She was playing an Eradicator Perfect Guard to search off of the effects that lets you add an Eradicator to your hand. But she, in 2 tournaments in a row, hadn't done that a single time. So she thought, it's not like strictly worse. You could keep your last card and also flex. So the mental damage is important. So she decided to play that, which I can get behind that. 9 grade 1s is kind of sketchy, but again, as long as you're mulliganing aggressively, you should be fine. Those Astral Poet players never whiff their G-Assist, and it's because of how aggressively they do things. Even if you do G-Assist, don't think of it as, oh man, I had to G-Assist. Be like, oh, thank the Lord in heaven that I was able to fix my hand and play Vanguard. You are abusing the G-Assist mechanic to be able to play a strong top end, and you only go -1, and you can generate a lot of advantage over the rest of the game. So don't sweat it too much if you G-Assist. This is the curve here, with 9, which I mean, you don't really want to do that. So you have 8, 9, 7, 4, but I mean, this kind of goes like this. So you kind of increase your ramp, or you ramp up in your aggression. Turn 1, you don't do too much. Turn 2, you can kind of start to play a little aggressively. Turn 3, you History Stride and you just start slamming. And things only get worse from your opponent from there. Especially because of some of the threats we have in the G zone, which we'll get to right after we go over the triggers. Because her trigger lineup is interesting. Well, I guess before that, Elementaria Sanctitude, and the last non-triggers she's playing. Elementaria is a strong card, of course. It's kind of difficult not to play it. There are reasons to not play it, but if you can fit it, why not? Again, that Bracing Angel Ladder is very important for the mirror match and for converting your pushes in general. Considering that Eradicators is probably the single strongest deck in the format, having a tech option to help beat them is very important. While it might not always win the tournaments, since it's not the most popular, it's still quite a good deck. Now, last card, this is the actual starter we're playing. Just one of those V starters. When it's for the pawn, draw a card and make Quick Shield if you went second. There are 2 main deck starters who are used for their effect. This card is really strong. Eradicator First Thunder Draco Kid has Forerunner, which we're not going to be using because we're not riding him. And then he has Rearguard. Put this unit into your soul. When your opponent's Rearguard is put into the drop zone due to an effect of one of your cards, if you have a grade 3 or greater Vanguard with Eradicator in its card name, you may pay the cost, which is putting him into the soul. If you do, you'll look at the 10 cards on the top of your deck, search for up to 1 Eradicator Sweep Command Dragon from among them, and you ride it and shuffle your deck. This is not to help us ride up faster. This is a defensive. I mean, I guess you could do that. No, if you have a grade 3 or greater Vanguard with Eradicator. So our only grade 3 is Steve. So you literally can't do that. It is just for the defensive play. Because our G guards let us retire and then bind our opponent's rear guard. So it was retired and sent to the drop zone and then bound. So that will trigger this effect. So you check the top 10 and you ride the Steve. you do get to, a lot of things happen. You get to use his on-play skill to retire one. You could then use his limit break skill to retire another, make another Excelgus. So you can draw 2 cards, retire 2 rear guards on your opponent's front row, and you have a new Vanguard, which triggers a quirky rules interaction, where since the attack target no longer exists, you don't get to like hit that unit because it's not there. You do still get to finish your drive checks and all that, and you, as we found out, she had a judge call, their opponent swung with at the end of the battle, this unit attacks a Vanguard skill, and then she did this, and she's like, well, it doesn't, but you didn't, like, but there's no attack target anymore, so is that what it's checking for? And the game, it took a long time. I was pretty sure in one thing, but it's just so whack. I should probably go get the head judge. And the head judge didn't know either. So he contacted a different head judge somewhere else and was like, hey, help me out here. Am I right? Is this how this works? And the game, it works as this like event system per se. So the event of a Vanguard being attacked was created. And even though that Vanguard is not there, there are things that replace events. And rewriting the Vanguard didn't replace any of the events. It just removed the target. So that event of attacked a Vanguard is still like in effect, even though there's no Vanguard that is being attacked. It was still a battle like that because Alicia thought that it worked the other way, that it wouldn't work, because when you move an attack to a rear guard that cancels it, that would get rid of it, of course, but that's a replacement effect. The battle and all of its effects are being replaced. When the unit is being rewritten and the attack target no longer exists, that's not a replacement effect. That's just by rule action. The attack target has changed, so the battle doesn't finish as normal. But the event of the Vanguard being attacked still goes through. So you can still, we're still able to trigger their end of battle skill, and we're able to do all the things they needed to do. And they were both very good sports about it, and they were both very responsible too. And they called judge before any triggers were checked, so that they could all assign all effects correctly and whatnot. Because that's what you want to do. Call judge before there's a problem and not after, because it's both players' responsibility to maintain the game state, and you can receive penalties for something your opponent does wrong, because it was your responsibility to help them. Let me have some tea for just a moment. I'm sure you can tell by my voice, but I'm kind of sick. Okay. That's nice in my throat. This comes up super clutch. This lets you do some disgusting defensive plays and weasel your way out of all sorts of tricky scenarios. So that's all of the non-triggers, leaving just the triggers. To start off, of course, we have 4 heal triggers, but these aren't heal guards. These are the resource heals, where when you G-guard with them, you can remove 2 heals from your drop zone, it and another one, to countercharge or soul charge. Pretty sure. This is or. This would both would be crazy. Yeah, you countercharge 1 or you soul charge 1. And because she had been having resource issues with this deck for a while, so it helps with that. But also, almost even more importantly, is it's an Eradicator, and how important it is for you to use your G-guards efficiently in this deck, which we'll get to very soon, I promise. Being able to add an Eradicator heal trigger was very important. The resource is nice, considering she has some issues with it, but more important than the resources, which is important, is extremely important that it's an Eradicator, because it lets you much more consistently get not just 1, but 2 heal triggers to your hand. This deck thrives when it can double G-guard. Double G-guarding is how they really weasel it. It makes this deck from like one of the strongest, from a strong deck into one of the strongest decks. It's because of how powerful their G-guardians are, which I promise we'll get to. To round out the other 2 Sentinels she had. There's 2 draw Sentinels. Oh gosh, only one of these is SP. What the heck? Dang. That's sad. I thought her deck was max rarity. Oh well. I didn't see that. Just 2 of those. But what's really strange, she has 2 stand triggers. That they have the skill that you can put them into the soul and countercharge. Just like Supersonic Sailor. But, well, except the difference is a Supersonic Sailor is a crit. And this is a stand. It's useful for the resource, of course. You don't really want to be playing stand triggers. But the resource gain is very important. Because there are a lot of endgames where you're not going to have the counterblast to do the things you want to do. Or the soul to get that last little oomph you need. Especially considering Steve's Limit Break costs a counterblast and a soul blast. This one card turns on the Limit Break, which allows it to be a plus in your resources, which is pretty clutch. It might sketch a lot of people out seeing the stands, and if she wasn't a champion, I feel like a lot of people would have a lot of issues with the stand triggers. But again, she is the champion. This call wasn't willy-nilly. It's not because she's a stand addict. It might be a little bit because of some games we've played in the past, over the past like year, where she's been, or over a year ago, I guess, when she was refining this. There's some really funny games would come up with where I would abuse stand triggers to do some degenerate stuff. When I was playing Murakumo, she's like, you know what? Maybe I should play some stands like that. Those are pretty good. And they are pretty good. And again, they are an Eradicator, so it's an easy way for you to, if you're out of resources, you can use one of your 8 Find an Eradicator cards to just get a resource involved. And if you have some finesse on you, then you can play around the stands and you can do some devastating checks with those. Next up is the Overtrigger. It's Dragveda. That doesn't need too much explanation. Dragveda is insane. Who doesn't want to stand their Vanguard? I'm not going to spend too much time on it. Next is our critical triggers. Of course, as we had enough Stride Fodders before, but just because we can pitch Esper and Steve doesn't mean we want to. So we're playing some 3 Stride Fodder crits. These are the ones that when you're pitching for Stride count as grade 3s, so that we don't have to pitch our powerful cards like Steve and Esper. We can keep those in rotation. And then the last 4 cards are those G-Era crits. They got errata to when you damage check them, you draw. They're very strong, so she's playing a whole playset. Because unless you have a really good reason not to, you almost certainly should just be playing them. They're kind of power creep in a nutshell, right? It's a crit, and it's a draw. When you're on Vanquisher, they float. They're just really good cards. So everything is pretty sensible, except the 2 stands might freak you out. But the resources are important. You can chew through resources pretty quick with your Strides and Steve. It's easy to run out. And with the stands, it gives you just enough resources to always do what you want to do, which is just quaint, isn't it? That is the entirety of the main deck here. So we can move on to the G Zone. Of course, she's got to flex with her World's Participant Harmonics Messiah to start the G Zone. And then if you think of it as a loop, it's actually at the start, but it's a thing called a loop buffer where you can blah, 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 blah. It's at the front and the back all at once, because you can just cycle through your G Zone pretty quick. Harmonics Messiah is a staple included in Premium. I don't need to go over too much of what it does. It has a large text box, but the only part that matters is if you go second, you get a second, bigger, stronger, quicker shield called Guardian Shield. It has 20k. I'm going to go over to Drachma next just because he's face up and staring at you. What is this Drachma doing here? This Drachma is a game winner. Remember, this deck was built in Crest format, and if you can get a pretty easy read on your opponent's hand when they're playing one of those crest decks, like you've seen them reveal a lot of information. They cannot ride grade 3s that aren't Tahari or Night Rose or whatever their crest is. They have to ride specifically those cards, and Drachma makes them ride a new card. So if you have info on like, oh, they're on a Harry, there's 2 in their damage zone, and there's 1 like blah 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 blah, you saw them bot deck it, or it's in their drop zone, or like, oh, there's just no way they have it. You can go into Drachma and just end their whole career. You take them off of grade 3, and then they can't stride. And so what if you lose your G zone? You have like 4 Excel markers. Who cares? They are on grade 2. You win. I watched in Top Cut her absolutely annihilate a Night Rose player with this card. They had a 4-card hand. She saw 3 of them in the drive checks, and she was like, all right, let's try Drachma, you lose. And he did lose. He just died. I saw her do it in Swiss. It comes up a lot. I saw in Rosemont, she was about to do it, and then her opponent conceded, which really made her sad, because it's Drachma. He's so fucking cool. This is mostly just for the crest matchups. It doesn't come up too much in other matchups, but it's still nice to have. It's a Zeroth Dragon. They're really swag. For one of the least impactful G guards, we have Counteract Dragon. When it's put on Guardian, your opponent chooses 2 of their front row rear guards and binds them. If they did, chooses up to 2 of their front row rear guards and binds them. If they did not bind 2 cards till the end of the battle, this unit gets plus 10k shield. If they did not bind any cards, it gets plus 10k shield. Your opponent will almost never actually bind it, but that just makes it your big shield G guard. The G guard's for 35, which, since you're an Excel clan, takes you to 47, which is pretty chunkin'. Sometimes you just need a G guard that's big shield. For the medium impactful one, we have 2 copies of Bulwark Dragon. Not just Bulwark Dragon, the Sky Guardian Supreme Dragon Bulwark. It has Thunderstrike 3, which means if your opponent has 3 cards in their bind zone, it gets 10k shield. Well, Thunderstrike 3 means 3 cards in their bind zone, and if you're at Thunderstrike 3, which is its condition, then it gains a 10k shield. And then at the end of the battle that it was placed on the Guardian Circle, it says that, but that's not what it does. I believe this card, it threw me off because it's none of the printings are correct, but at one point I saw somebody with the correct printing, and it made me almost do the judge call wrong, because I just know that this card doesn't do what it says on it. So I read it and goes, oh, that's not what this card does. But they somehow had it obtained like an errata copy from like an ancient Bushiroad errata exchange, I imagine. It's not at the end of the battle. It's at the close step of the battle that this unit was placed on Guardian Circle. For every 4 cards in your opponent's bind zone, you choose one of your opponent's rest front row rear guards and retire it. This gets around end of battle skills because it's supposed to trigger first. The way it's written, it says at the end of the battle, so it doesn't trigger first, and it loses to those kinds of skills, which is really lame. But it is specifically included because it does, after the errata, beat those end of battle skills. It triggers just before the end of battle skills trigger. So if your opponent attacks with like, let's say Mighty Rogue Nightstorm, where at the end of the battle it attacks, you can counterblast 1 and close something from your drop zone. You can G-Guard with Bulwark. And then at the close step, I believe it's when this unit is retired from Guardian Circle, that it'll trigger its effect. And then you can retire the Nightstorm, and then the Nightstorm won't be on the field at the end of the battle trigger timing for its effect to come by. And now the most important card, low-key the most important card in the G-Zone, the most important card in the clan, the most important card in the format, the biggest, the baddest. It is the one, the only Sky Guardian Supreme Dragon Impede. Impede is their flippy G-Guard, so you have to have the G unit face up in order to use its effect. But this is why we want to have 2 G-Guards, because if you can call 2 of these at once, it's really devastating. You can, a little known rules quirk, you can simultaneous call G-Guards. So let's say you have, you've used one of these previous, you flip something up, and you G-Guarded with this, and you have 3 face-up G units. You can't G-Guard anymore once you have 4 face-up cards in your... 4 face-up G-Guardians. So if you G-Guarded one at a time and called Impede, and then you couldn't call the second Impede. But G-Guards are simultaneous, so you can call both Impedes, and it doesn't work in this particular deck since she doesn't have that. So you could only flip 1. But if you were playing a 7th G-Guard, then you could flip up 2, and you'd be chilling. But if you had like 2 face-up, call, flip, you would still be able to call flip in this particular G-Zone. But in general, I've seen it come up in other Eradicator matchups. I had a judge call about that in, was it Long Beach? I think it was Long Beach. Something like that came up where they're like, well, everyone was like, Judge, they can't do that. They blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, sorry, I'll just simultaneous call. And I'm like, well, that's fine. Sure, you can do that. As long as you do things in the right sequence. And there's the last rule in the floor rules is if it doesn't matter, if the order doesn't matter, then it's fine. I mean, the order did matter in that point, but like it shouldn't. It's just like the pedantics of I'm calling, like, yeah, let me show you that I'm doing 1, let me show you them. It's the minutia of how you resolve these things. But those flippy G guards, you're flipping, right? But for what? Why are we flipping? You flip a G guard face up. When it's placed on Guardian, may pay the cost. If you do, your opponent chooses one of their rear guards, retires it, and binds it. And if the number of your rear guards is less than your opponent's by 2 or more, they do it again. So since you have a lot of floaters, if you build a light board, you can call 2 of these and then get rid of your opponent's entire board. You can retire 3 or 4 cards, which is pretty easy to shut down a push, because even though your opponent chooses, you run out of good choices pretty quick when you're asked to choose 3 or 4, especially if you need all those units for your push. So you can get into situations with this where you can, if you played Magic, you've heard of the card Time Walk. It's a card that lets you take an extra turn, just 1 card. So this is a 2-card Time Walk. You put down 2 of these, you get rid of your opponent's board, their turn is over. You essentially got to take an extra turn by using your G-Guards. I mean, after that costs 2 and flip 2, so you can't G-Guard anymore after that. But that's all you need. Taking 1 extra turn is often enough, especially in a deck like this that can really punch through. The rest of the strides, this next stride is a little strange. It's probably the least impactful card on the G-Zone, the card I've seen her stride the least, but it is still very useful. Conquering Supreme Dragon, Dragonic Vanquisher, Voltage. You, once per turn, act, Persona Flip the Voltage, and then of course you get the... I always hate that where you have an act, Persona Flip, to get an auto. It's really annoying. You then get the auto. When its attack hits a Vanguard, choose one of your opponent's rear guards, retire it, choose 2 cards from their drop zone and bind them. And it also gets the continuous GB3 during your turn. All of your front row units gets +3 for each card in your opponent's bind zone. So this is just like a, it's mostly played with that GB3 for those like end games when you're out of other strides. It can make your front row pretty strong, especially after you use the GB8. Conquering Supreme Dragon Closer. It's a GB8, so you have to have 7 face-up cards in your G-Zone and then him, or you could also have 8 face-up cards. But you need to have 8 face-up G units total in your zones. When it's placed on Vanguard, retire all rear guards of all fighters. Bind all of the cards in your opponent's drop zone face up, and until end of turn it gets all of your front row units gets +2 for each card in all fighters bind zone. So if you GB8 them, but then they like weasel their way out of it, then you can go into Voltage and then you can clean up. Or sometimes you can Voltage to apply the pressure that you need in between your GB8. This has won a lot of games. When I was helping her playtest in the Crestari format, I was playing a lot of Night Rose. This card would be the end of me most of the time. I could do a lot of cute little tricks and this and that and play around this and stop you from doing that. And then it's like, okay, I'm binding your entire fucking drop zone. It's all gone. No more tricks. Die. And like, even if you'd have to play like 10D chess and like get a sleeve tugging bell to your hand preemptively. But then if you're doing that, you might not have enough, and consistently, I would not have enough defensive options to live through the huge push that creates. Because it does a lot of power. 2 for all bound, and you're Grand Blue, so you just give them like plus like 40 to their front row. It's Chibi 8, so you can't just like no guard the whole turn. They have Espers to restand. This card, Closer, really describes it. It's a closer. It can end the game. Next up, we have our limited friend Stunverse, which she did go into a sizable number of times. Conquering Supreme Dragon, Stunverse, has an act effect to Soul Blast 1 and flip a G unit face up. You return it to your G zone. Then you make your opponent bind 4 cards from their hand, or 4 cards from their board, and 4 cards from their drop zone. And then for every 4 cards in their bind zone, you draw a card and your opponent discards a card. Or it's this painting of it is written so small I can't quite read it. No, they do bind it. Okay, they don't just discard it; they bind it. So your opponent chooses 4 rear guards and 4 cards from the drop zone and binds them. So just even if it's base value, if they've walked into it by like having a lot of cards in their bind zone and drop zone, you can just stride this, make them lose their board and discard 2 cards. But if it's late on in the game, they can discard like 3 and you can draw 3. And there's a cute little thing you can do early on in the game, where even if you're not going to get full value out of this, you can stride it, do its effect, and then go back into Dragonic Vanquisher. Since it's an act main phase skill to do the history collection stride, you can use Stunverse to wipe their board and accelerate your bind count and draw an extra card. Since it's going to draw you the card, and you pitching for stride kind of makes it wash out, so that you can accelerate your bind count and disrupt a card in their hand. If you can get total from their forehand, from your board and drop zone. Then you can go into the history stride, which we went over. You can then go from this into this and get 2 strides in 1 turn, which is pretty cute. I don't think she's done that very often, but I've seen it done in general. It's a cute play item that comes up. And then the last 2 cards in the G zone are 2 copies of Exterminate, who we went over before. Exterminate is kind of the end-all be-all of the G zone. He's by far the most important stride. This is the most important card in the G zone, sure. But this is the most important stride, where you stride it, you counterblast 1, you draw 2, Soul Blast 1 to draw 2, or 3 or 4 or 5 if you're playing against an unfortunate Excel deck. And then you can get plus 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 to your front row and beat in. This gives the deck a really good matchup into Excel decks, especially if they're not playing carefully, and makes the mirror relatively skill intensive, where if you generate 2 Excel gifts too quickly and you can't like properly defend your board, this can absolutely destroy you. Absolutely destroy you. A lot of people might be wondering why she's not playing more. And if these other silly cards like Drachma or this guy mean anything. But low-key, you don't need to go into a third one. The first 2 give you so much value, and I believe they flip. Oh, this doesn't flip. That's interesting. Huh. I didn't realize it didn't flip. But that's okay. Because even if it doesn't flip, this does. So when you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that gets you pretty close to your GB8 here. Unless you get in through for the last little bit of money. Especially if you are going to history stride. Then you can do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And just with these, you're up to your GB8 to punch through. And then that for a additional big push. And you might be out of Steve's to rewrite into. Because again, this card is only strong if you can clear out your opponent's front row. So if you are late into the game and you lack the ability to do that, then this card isn't very strong, so having too many of it can end up getting in your way. And this G-Zone was relatively refined. After playing with this deck for multiple events, she never touched the G-Zone. It all felt very perfect in her eyes. The only thing she ended up changing was the Perfect Guard to Flex, and she should have changed Meteor Flare Dragon to be something that was more impactful. In the 3 tournament runs she's done with this list, Meteor Flare Dragon has done literally nothing. Literally nothing. I don't even know if she's ridden it. She might have, like, once because she wanted to be on a 10K or something. But that about covers it for all of the card choices. They are all very well thought through. Even the sketchy stands, even voltage. Every card in here belongs and was put here with intention and purpose. You don't just waltz into being the champion of a BCS. You don't just waltz up there. You can stumble your way in a top 32. You can get pretty far, but to win the whole event takes a lot. And she lost 2 games in Swiss before her teammate let her in. Again, there's a lot more to the game than just playing the game. Having a circle of people that you play with to share information, actual physical cards, hotel rooms to be able to get to events, and information, not just of like information of like, oh, what's good in the format, but information of, oh yeah, that guy, I saw him playing X deck, watch out for this interesting tech card he was playing. Having a circle of players helps you perform better because you can train against them as well. I don't think would have topped this event if she was just playing by herself the whole time. If she never reached out, if she didn't become part of the Portland community, and by extension, since I'm part of the Portland and the Vegas communities, she got intertwined with the Vegas community as well. It is quite possible that she wouldn't have this top. So it's important to have the player's skills, but also the social skills. Because there's 4 things you have control over. Well, there's 4 areas that influence. You only have control over part of it. There's what cards you play in your deck building, that you have control over. You have control over how you play those cards. That's your technical play. You don't have control over what decks your opponents play, but you can metagame them. That's what the Meteor Flare Dragon was supposed to be in there for, but it should be that other card that metagames those Fenrir decks. And there's also how your opponents play. So that lets you do some like mind games and stuff, which I remember once she's won a game like that. All 4 of those areas matter a lot, but even just aside from those areas that you can control, you can't control everything. Having a social group to play the game with helps to add a lot. With the advice and training she got with me and our groups, she was able to pull through and win an entire BCS. We are all working on the shoulders of giants. We all work together to create these wonderful things. I would love to sit here and do the redraw exercise with y'all, but I really am trying to make a video that's less than an hour. I'm trying so hard. But I talk so much. I have so many things to say. So maybe one day we can have like 2 segments where we can have like a podcast type thing where I can just talk for an hour or 2 even. And you can just put me on in the background while you do your dishes or drive to work or blah, blah, blah. But I want to do the champion some service and make this video more clickable by being just a little less than an hour. Just a little bit. Just a little. So you're just going to have to trust me when I say that 9 grade 1s is enough. Just mulligan aggressively if you do not have a grade 1 in your hand. It is tempting and possible to put your entire hand back looking for one. Sometimes you might need to keep like a 2 or something because you don't have that many. And you have ways to find your 3s since you have You have ways. Your deck is really consistent, but you need a grade 1, so do not be afraid to mulligan aggressively. Don't be afraid to make friends with your opponents. They are your opponents at events. They are not your enemies. If you make friends with them, those bonds can last a long time, and you can end up seeing each other at future events. And you can end up creating lasting bonds that can improve your social circle to give you better players to playtest against, better people to share information with, better people to, when it's the final round and you're struggling to get that last win, some people who might realize, well, I'm cooked. I just wanted this last win for my ego, but you're my friend and you're in, so I'll let you have it. Because that's not against the rules. It would be against the rules to like collude, or you can't ask your opponent for it. You can't be like, hey man, give it to me. You can't be like, oh, you should give it to me and then I'll give you my top 16 prize, blah, blah, blah. That's collusion and that's against the rules. That's not allowed. But if a player can concede at any time for any reason, and if their reason is, I want to see you in top cut, that's a perfectly valid reason to concede. Quick little, one last little. The finals of Rosemont in Premium was a turn 0 concession because the guy didn't want the sponsored invite. He didn't want Bushiro to sponsor him because it was going to mess up his like flight plans or whatever. He just wanted the invite, period. So he knew his opponent, so he's like, hey man, you could just have the sponsored invite. It's chill. So they stand up there over triggers as they're starting vanguards and then say, yeah, you got it, and they shake hands. And the tournament organizers is like, well, okay, I guess. Mimi, you watch the other game. I'm going over to HQ. So if you're ever wondered how on earth did Revengers beat Meteor Colony, they didn't. They never will beat Meteor Colony. They cannot defeat Meteor Colony, but the power of friendship prevails over all things. So remember, the point of these events is to make friends and have fun. Don't get out there and get too focused on winning and try and play some degenerate nonsense. Get out there and have a blast. She played this deck because she loves Eradicators. She's played them for so long, since they came out in G. She's been a Naru girl for a long time. You can win with your favorites, and sometimes your favorites are really strong. So never give up. Keep fighting, keep trying. It's not like she won with this deck the first event she played with it. The first event she played with it, she kind of, I don't think she scrubbed out per se, but she didn't do very well. But she knew it was her deck her deck was great, and it was just like kind of unlucky. And sometimes it's important to be able to assess when you are actually unlucky and when you are being salty. And so she was able to correctly assess that she got unlucky, and then she ran it down on the next one, and then got unlucky in top 16 and died. She was like, well, I got unlucky, I can still do it. So she ran back her same deck, slightly worse even, and then won the whole event. So you have to know when to believe in yourself, when to believe in your cards. Being a champion isn't just doing one cute little trick. Being a champion is a summation of so many things. And I'm really proud of her to have seen her had this success and to get the sponsored invitation to the World Championships. So with that, that's been me, Professor Mimi from Card Fight Crash Course. I hope you learned something from her deck and from my breakdown of it. And maybe I hope you learned something from my silly little stories too. I was just barely able to keep it under an hour. I kept my promise despite everything. Alright, that's it from me. Spread love, everybody. Be kind. I'll see you next time. Bye.